you know that it was very intimidating to be part of this and sharing my story, because I have hardly like shared this deep inside my story. And I have the honor to be present to many of the stories that we have seen here with the Faces of ACES. And at one point, I have to be honest that I feel very intimidated, because I feel maybe my story is not that traumatic, or maybe my story, you know, what I felt, it wasn't, because it doesn't compare to someone else's story. And that made me realize that sometimes we probably think, because my story is not exactly like the other one, or because my story doesn't reflect as much trauma, maybe I should not be feeling the feelings that I feel. And it made me realize that that is incorrect. We have to listen to what our body says and our mindsets, and we have to be very acknowledgeable of those traumas, because sometimes I feel like our mind tries to play tricks in us, and we cannot progress and heal. So anyway, so this is my story. So I want you to be. I always love to say, please listen with your hearts, but more with your ears, but most of it with your open hearts, because that's how we learn the most, and that's how we can be proactive on helping others as going through it. So I decided to do a slide because I was telling Candace I have never shared this story like in public like this. And I felt like if I didn't have something to guide me, I probably was gonna be jumping all over the place. So this is more like, well, of course, to put a face on what my background and everything, but also to keep me on track of what I want to share with you guys. So I call my presentation a life from black and white to color, because this is a story of two major events in my life that made me see life in full color. So that is why I call it black and white to color. So the first slide that you see there is, of course, the black and white picture. In the middle is my mom and I. And then you see another one of my two brothers and my mom and I. You see one in the corner that is very special dear to my heart. My mom passed away this past November, and that was one of the pictures I took right before she passed, of me holding her hand. And you can also see another picture down there of me on a little horse and with my dad, with that has a lot to do with the story I'm going to share with you today. And please, anything that you have a question or something, please don't hesitate to let me know. So let's start with a blast of from the past. So what looks normal on the outside can be completely opposite of what is happening in the inside. So I'm going to start first with the picture of my mom and my two brothers. My mom was married, her first marriage, she had actually my two brothers. My mom was an only child, and she had a lot of resilience within her. And that is why I think I have inherited that. And I'm going to talk a little bit over that. But when my brothers were 8 and 9, their dad passed away very early from a heart attack. And my mom at that point had to basically go out to the world and be a single mom and be proactive to maintain my brothers. So fast forward 18 years, my mom remarried with my dad, and here I came. You know, so I have two solid like brothers that were already older. They were 17 and 18 years old. But you can see a picture of my mom and my dad there. And actually, that is the only picture that I have of them together. So you can see they look very happy. Well, I don't know if my dad looks very happy in the picture, but my mom seems very content. There's a picture of me. But as you see right next to it, of course, you see there was a lot of struggles in the marriage. And the reason why was because my dad was an alcoholic. He was a very successful man. Him and my mom opened an amazing business of leather. It was one of the biggest businesses in Bogota initially. And unfortunately, with the alcohol, he decided to go gambling, and many things started to unfold. at that point. So right here we see that unfortunately, the alcohol it's like a ripple effect, what I call it. During that time, a lot of like aggression started to happen. He would come home. I remember literally I was very little with my mom, and he will sometimes go and disappear for a period of time, 2 3 days, or it could have been a week. And then when he will come back home, he was extremely aggressive under the alcohol influence, to a point that my mom always, I remember her like pushing me inside the room, and lock the door. And unfortunately, he always reached the door, and he will always, I remember, like the screaming, the hitting on the door, the breaking of the doors. And then I don't know what happens after that. And that is something that I still like processing, because I don't know if I would like run out of the building. I don't know if out of the room. I don't know if I was like, I went under the bed, hiding in the closet, but it's almost like a blackout moment that I have in my life. I remember my mom screaming, and basically that's it until the next morning, when I will always see my mom completely bruised and in tears and completely broken. I couldn't understand basically what was going on. That was very early in my age, 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, and this is something that went on almost on a daily, like not a daily, but it was almost like a weekly basis. Very abusive, and my dad started to basically put my mom down, also on top of me, like in front of me. She was a bad person. I was not. I was not loved by her. It was like a very like traumatic experience that what he put in my mind. Also, I have like alcohol brings aggression, bruises, loss of trust. I didn't know what to believe because I was receiving all the love and care from my mom, but I have this person in my life who was extremely valuable to me, saying all these things for me. I have fear. I had unknowns. I was feeling worthless many times. I used to hide this from everybody at school. And I was looking for refuge. I was looking, also, there was a lack of understanding. In Colombia, you don't talk about what happens in your household outside of your household. So I couldn't, I have teachers, wonderful teachers and everything, but I would never confine actually on anybody of what was happening inside my house. I was trying to look what was normal, but I couldn't find it because I was very young. So I didn't have anything to compare of what was normal. Um, During this time, I also, you see the picture of the black face in the hand. My dad, my mom actually at one point kicked my dad out of the house because he was becoming very aggressive. Specifically, I remember an event that he came in, he hit my mom, but on top of that, he went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife and lay down in bed. And I remember, this is one of the things I remember vividly, because I remember my mom like screaming because she was in fear of her life and my life. And I went to beg him to give me that knife. Um, and I was 6 years old, and he refused. And I remember he fell asleep with holding that knife. So that was extremely traumatic. And my mom, at that point, I believe that she realized we need to do something about it. So he was out of he got out of the house. He left the house for a long period of time. And during that time, my mom was a single parent again, and she confined in a lot of family friends that we had. And that's when my second experience of trauma kind of began, because one of those male friends decided to take upon, like, I'm going to teach this girl the love of a man, not of a father. So he actually touch me. It was never like completely sexual that it happened, and I'm so thankful for that. But because my mom was working all the time, she didn't realize this was happening. This is something that I kept with me. It lasted probably maybe 6 to 8 months. When I told my mom, like, I really didn't feel comfortable with this. He was married, and my mom was very good friends of the wife. The wife had no idea that it was happening. And I told her that I didn't feel comfortable. And that was something, I have always been very social since I was little. So my mom asked me why was this happening, why I wasn't feeling comfortable, but I never felt comfortable enough or open enough to tell my mom the real reason why, because this guy used to tell me that my mom was actually asking him to show me things that I was supposed to learn with somebody. And I know that was a completely lie. It was a manipulation. So that lasted about 8 months to a year, actually. In the meantime, my dad was going kind of like back and forth. My mom definitely put her foot down and said, I'm not going to continue with this. And he left. But in a way, my mom wanted me to have a relationship with him because that's the kind of person that she was. She was always giving the benefit of the doubt to the other people. So I saw him maybe twice a year from then on, after a lot of like abuse, like I explained before. The abuse lasted for about 5 years that I witnessed that kind of abuse. She became completely single mom. And one of the things that we don't talk about ACEs, and actually when you take your ACEs test and the scores, they don't talk about the terrorist as a traumatic event. But in my position, I have to say that it was a traumatic event. My mom and I were living by ourselves in Colombia during the awful times of Pablo Escobar, and he put bombs everywhere in the country, including one that it was very close to actually where my mom and I used to live. And I remember vividly being laying down in bed with my mom at night, and then suddenly hearing this wave of something that it was coming our way, and I couldn't understand, and it went surpass us where we were laying down, and it was actually the shock wave of the bomb that had just exploded close to us and broke all the windows of the building where we were used to live. So it was actually a pretty terrible time to be in Colombia. We managed to go ahead and be back and forth, but it was very traumatic because you never knew this man decided to, have like bloodshed from everywhere in the country. So that's why I put, and it's funny because it's not funny, but I found this quote that is here in the screen that says the purpose of terrorism lies not just in the violent act itself. It is producing terror. It sets out of the flame to divide, to produce consequences, which they then use to just justify further terror. And when I read this, I can actually feel like it wasn't just the terrorist attack, but actually I almost apply it to what my dad was doing towards us, because it was absolutely terror what he was putting upon us and my mom, specifically. So here we move on a little bit. During the temporary normality, I had my two very strong brothers that put their foot down and kind of like stop my dad from continue abusing my mom the way he was abusing to her, and they made me feel protected in a way. But while all this is happening, of course, I still have the shadows of the effects were still palpable. I mean, that's a picture of me doing my first communion when I was raised as Catholic, and that has to do a lot with my story. But it was pretty bad. So my brothers were a rock for my mom and I during this time. But then again, my dad was always that shadow because he never took responsibility of his actions. He never apologized for what happened. He always had an excuse and always blamed my mom that his reactions and his behavior was because of my mom's fault. Um, Escaping the storm. I love this quote. This is actually from Mark Anthony. It says, and one day she discovered that she was fierce and strong and full of fire, and that not even she could hold herself back because her passion burned brighter than her fears. And that is when actually my mom decided enough is enough. My brothers were already living here in the United States, and we moved to the United States. My mom was like, if I continue being here, my dad was always going to be that present, that shadow upon her and upon me. So that is actually when we moved to the States for the first time. So I was, that picture is about when I'm in fourth grade. And it was her bravery, it was her decision. She knew, and when I was older, we were able to talk about it. And she said that I was her force for her to definitely escape from that torment. She said if she didn't have me at that point, probably she would have continued because she depended a lot financially from my dad. But she realized that her priority in her life was to protect me. So that's when we had the opportunity to come to the States for the first time. When I came to the States, I came to the States, did my fourth year in school, and then I came back to my senior year, and I stayed in the United States at that point. And this is where my first big event in my life happened, that I started to see in color. And that is when I had the great opportunity to work with Mario Petrino and Nayade, and there are the pictures on the bottom corner. They have this Cuban restaurant, amazing Cuban restaurant, and I started to work as a host. So between lunch and dinner, there's always this gap of that the restaurant wasn't too busy at that point. And Mario took upon to come and create a relationship with me and started talking to me about life. How was my life in Colombia? I share a little bit, but like I said, I have been very protective about my my trauma, that I didn't share that too much. But he could tell that there was something different and something that deep inside was bothering me. So he was the one who actually came to me and started to talk to me about the Lord. And that was huge because at the beginning I was very resistant. I was Catholic at that point. I felt like it was going to be like a betray. And he told me, he explained me. I mean, the God who is Catholic, who is the Lord, the God that I worship, it is the same. The difference is to have that personal relationship with the Lord, and for you to give to him all your sins and all your burdens that you have. And that's what caught my attention, because I deep inside have all these burdens that I didn't want to give to anybody. But if I have this person that I can have a personal relationship with, and it would not judge me in anything, that's what drew me to it. So I became a believer in Jesus Christ, and that was one of my biggest changes in my life. And that's when I always say to him, I went into that little office in that restaurant, and I gave myself to the Lord, and I came back and I could see in colors. So that was the first big event I have. Only Jesus can turn a mess into a message, a test into a testimony, and a trial into a triumph. And for me, that was a huge trump. I have give all my mess, all my worries, all my unknowns and questions that I couldn't ask anybody, and I gave it to him. And also another thing there says, be grateful for the wound that pushes you towards God. And I think all those wounds that I had was another reason why it pushed me to the Lord. So things are perfect right now, right? No, they were not actually perfect. Even though the Lord brought me so much peace and everything, and I say things are falling into place and life is looking normal and at peace, my faith is helping me to keep afloat, and my relationship with the Lord keeps me growing. But then again, something shift. I had that personal relationship with him, but that trauma was still there, and I was not dealing with the trauma that had been within me. Even though I had given it to him, I had personally not dealt with it. So this is so true for me, like feeling the need to be busy all the time is a trauma response and fear based on distraction from what you have been forced to acknowledge and feel. And if you slow down. So I became this workhorse. I wanted to stay busy, stay focused, go to church, pray, read my Bible and the whole thing. But I was like busy, 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 trying to control that extra trauma that I had within me. So what happens at that point is like I started to feel there's so much things that I don't understand what is happening, or why do I have that reaction, or why do I have that feeling deep inside. Like when I was at home and somebody will slam a door, for example, or somebody will just scream if there was an argument and somebody screamed. Those were things that trigger me tremendously. And I was like, it was like almost like a full force of almost like a panic attack. And I couldn't understand. And I would just go to prayer, and immediately I would like relax in that prayer and everything. But then again, it happened. Or even if I was outside and something like a loud noise, it was something like that it will always trigger my emotions, and I couldn't pinpoint it. Why? Because all my trauma has been buried completely deep down, and I was not acknowledging what it was happening. I didn't know how to acknowledge, and I didn't know that it was actually trauma that it was happening. It was just unknown, and I wasn't certain what was happening. Of course, there was like happiness. Life is full of colors. My kids, my lives, absolutely. But the wounds of my past was reflecting in multiple shades of black and white and gray in my inside. I have my three beautiful boys. Then Hannah came along, and I was very overprotective of them. I had a prior marriage that actually I got married at 19. That is one of the ripple effects, because I jumped into marriage because I was trying to find that solid and real relationship that a man and a woman should have. And I cannot jump ahead of what I was, that I should have. Now, do I have regrets? No, because I have two beautiful boys, but from that marriage. But my relationship was not healthy at all. I allowed him to do many things on the side that I should have never, because I was craving for that relationship. And he got abused. He got abusive, very verbal abusive towards me. And one time he put a hand on me, but I did remember my mom and what she went through. And I have always promised to myself that I would never allow somebody to do something like this. But I was very close to allow that to continue happening. But I called my mom. She has always been my rock. And she told me, you need to stop it, because you know how this can continue. So actually I got divorced. And then I met my wonderful husband, Jay, who has been one of my solid rocks in my life. Alejandra and Christian were 2 and 4 years old at that time when I married him, and he has loved those boys like they are his. And then we have Josh and Hannah, who are here in the pictures. Then I started working for, the school system, and my first 4 years I was the Spanish interpreter and translator. And then I went to this meeting with Denise Fresno, and she started to talk about ACES, and I was like, and I was like, oh, I have had a wonderful, childhood. I thought I was loved. My mom took care of me more than anybody I could imagine. My brothers were there. I have good friends. I have basically a good life. So I was like, I'm gonna take this test, and I'm gonna be a 0 or a 1 maybe. And then I took it. And then when I took it, it was like that veil, the last veil that I needed, lifted up. And I was like, this explains so much of that fear when I hear noises, when I hear screamings, when I have talks about alcoholism and gambling and all this. And that was like the final shade that needed to live for me to continue seeing my life in full color. So this is the second event in my life that has changed completely. Being number one, when I gave my life to the Lord. Number two, when I realized the importance of dealing with our childhood experiences, adverse childhood experiences. I am defined by the, right there it says adverse childhood experiences do not define me. I am defined by the compassion and wisdom imparted by those who knew nothing of my despair. And I am so thankful to so many friends that probably saw some things here and there and never me for it. And I honestly can remember my husband saying before I ever heard about ACES, he told me one day, I really think there is something inside you that was very traumatic. And I remember being kind of like feeling a little bit offensive. And I said, Jay, my life was great. My mom was the best mom in the world. And my brothers and this and that. And he's so right, everything that it was happening. It was definitely inside of me. When I saw it there, I was like, I need to start sharing all this with so many in my life, because if this is me thinking that I had a perfect childhood and nothing was wrong with me, I just cannot imagine if I can start sharing, especially with the Latino community that is very dear to my heart. So then, of course, the story that defines me is faith and ACES. When we think about, I have that picture of my mom and I and that DNA right next to it, because my mom's resilience DNA, I know is like inside of me. And I have been able to be strong in my life thanks to her. And I love that thing that says sometimes you don't realize the weight of something you have carried until you feel the weight of its release. And that is exactly what happened to me when I learned about ACEs and I started to be educated, and I was able to share my fears and everything that happened to me with my husband at the beginning, because he was the one that I confided most and I was able to share. But then again, I realized, like, if I don't take this and actually share it, I will maybe deprive somebody from learning from this amazing experience that happened to me. One of the things that I want to make sure that I mention right now is, like, for me, it was my faith in the Lord, but that doesn't have to be for everybody. I mean, if anybody has a question about how is my walk with the Lord, I'd be more than glad to, but we all have different outlets. So make sure that you follow those outlets that are your safe ground for you. But for me, the strongest part for me to continue during this journey, of course, is praying, the self-care and healing. But there was a component that it was missing in my life, and that's the one that I will share next, and it's forgiveness. For me, actually, my mom passed away November 23rd of last year, and my dad passed away on September 8th of that last year as well. And I learned that he was in Colombia, and one of my aunts called me to let me know. And to tell you the truth, that opened up a whole thing, because I thought like, this is not going to affect me. But then I started to feel mad about the whole thing. And there was a reason why I was so frustrated about the whole situation. He died. He never cared about me. He was an alcoholic. He chose alcohol, gambling, and his lifestyle more than us. And I realized, you know what? There was nobody who could guide him. There was nobody that actually could do more for him. So I couldn't carry that. In order for me to be able to surpass that was to forgive him and for what he had done, and also for that other man that harmed me in a way. So for me, it was forgiveness. And when I forgave, I was able to go ahead and move on. I don't think I could have continued my life without that forgiveness. If I am going to be walk in the Lord's feet, I need to forgive because he forgave me first. So never be ashamed of the scars that life has left you with. A scar means the hurt is over, the wound is closed, you endure the pain, and God has healed you. For me, that is solid ground. And things that I do now that I love for self-care is like I spend time with people that make me laugh and make me feel love. That is one of the self-cares that I do. Of course, the relationship with the Lord is number one in my life, but we don't have time to waste. So don't waste your time doing something that you're not pleased. Make sure that you spend the time where you feel good, where you feel value, where you feel loved and important. Because if you feel like that, you're going to be able to give back the same way. And I just finished with this the last slide is, the same title. I have Felipe, which that's one of my self-cares. My dogs are one of my self-cares, and I have my beautiful family in the bottom. So that's it. That is my story, kind of like in a little shell for you guys.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. What a beautiful, beautiful story of resilience. Oh my goodness. Some of those quotes that you shared, I typed in the chat because I think that they resound with lots of us, for lots of us. So I wanted folks to be able to go back and look at those again if they wish to do that. Just what a healing process creating this must be for you.
Yes. To tell you the truth, it was like going to a retreat, creating this slide, because it made me look deeper, which pictures I wanted to share, looking for, the quotes, which one identifies with me, because there's many quotes when you go, but there's some specifically that touch your heart, and that is basically a reflection of what you have gone through. And I can stop sharing right now, but yes, it's been a process, and I'm still in that process. It's not like it's done, it's over, because I don't think it never ends.
I think that's so true. I've heard the saying that doctors have practices because they never quit learning. You go to a medical practice to get healthcare services. And I think it's the same way with being a human being. We have to practice being human. We have to practice healing. We have to continually move from one thing, one stage of life, and to another, so that we continue to grow. It's not something that ends when we finish school or when we get the job of our dreams or whatever the thing is. We just keep growing and growing and growing. When we know better, we do better.
Right? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's why we have to share it. We cannot keep it to ourselves. And that's why I'm going to be strong and share it. And when I went to Denise and I said, I want to share it, I have to back myself up, and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't need to do this, but I'm very, I believe that when I have something put in my mind, in my heart, I have to follow that. And that is why I was like, yeah, I know it's going to be tough, but I guess I'll go ahead and do it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Let's see a couple of the things from the chat. Someone said you've got a beautiful family and it's inspiring to see the success you have created for yourself. Thank you for sharing your story. Somebody else says, thank you for sharing your story. We're so glad you're a part of our community. I love that. Here's another comment about how open you are. She says, I love how open you are about your faith, along with the realization of your ACEs, that those things go hand in hand. I noted that too, that those have been milestones of your healing. Too often we gloss over spirituality. Oh, it moved for me. There it is. Too often we gloss over spirituality, and research is finding that it is absolutely essential to our healing. And I appreciate you saying my faith in the God that I worship may be different from whatever you have faith in or whomever you have faith in. But I think it's important to acknowledge that we all have spirituality needs, and wherever, whatever that is for each individual, it's important to acknowledge those and to figure out how to make faith a part of our daily lives somehow.
Absolutely.
So lots of other things in here about thank you and just noting your courage and strength and admiring that. Yay, good stuff. I wonder if there's any questions for Yolanda. Feel free to unmute if you've got a question. So you talked a lot about your husband, Jay, and how he's part of your support system. And I know your mom was a big part of your support system. We always talk about during WCCI and our Compassionate Schools movement within the school system about how important that consistent, caring, positive adult is. Are there others that you've learned to depend on? How does that work for you? Is it mainly just Jay and your family, or?
Yeah, you know, I consider myself a very blessed person because I feel like the people that surround me are like amazing. And to tell you the truth, I feel like that close group that I have, I can go and blur something out, like I'm exhausted or this is happening or I'm having a hard day. I have definitely a strong group of friends that are here, and I have become to be very selective. You have some friends that are like out, let's go shopping friends or let's have dinner friends. And there are some others that I know that if I go and tell them whatever, I will never like be judged about it. There will be understanding. There will be people, somebody who can actually just sit and listen if that's what it needs to happen. So I have become very good friends. Kat is like one of the persons that I know that I can text her and say this and that, or man, I hate this, or, or something like that, or, and I know she's here and I say, hey, I'm going to be sharing today if you want to come. But, of course, Denise has been one of those, you can't, I have solid people that probably I have not go straight forward to something terrible or like share something specifically, but I have that solid ground of friends that I know if I need something, if I have to vent, I can contact any of you and you will have an open heart to hear. So that is very, very important for me. But yeah, Jay has been absolutely my rock. He has supported me on all my craziness of life, my ideas and everything. And he's very patient with me. I have to say, very patient. And you know what is beautiful? Now I have two grown kids, Alejandra and Christian. They're 21 and 19 now. And now it's my relationship with them have reached another phase, let's say. And I have been able to share many, many, many things with them. And it has been beautiful because they are learning, they admire, and then they even advise me, which is pretty amazing to see. So yeah, I will have to say those are like my group of people, my tribe.
Good for you. Good for you. Thank you for sharing. I'll be quiet a moment in case somebody else wants to ask another question. Just hop on in. Well, I'm curious. your role in the school system and with many organizations around the high country is interpreter and connector for our friends in the Hispanic community. What are some of the ways that you are trying to help the folks in that community understand ACEs and understand the resilience skills that you've learned?
Yeah, I thought that it
question.
was, yeah, absolutely. I thought it was extremely important for me to share, especially once I learned about ACEs. You know, I'm very open about my faith, but when I learned about ACEs, it gave me that huge door of opportunity to approach the Latino community that sometimes is very close, and they see experiences like I went through, like a taboo that you don't talk about those at all, because then you're weak about it, and then you just can't go ahead and just move on and forget about it. But I went through it, and I know that you just cannot move forward completely in healing if you don't address those issues. So that had gave me a great opportunity to go ahead and talk to our families that I work with directly and actually share my story with them, because I feel like by me sharing my story, they're going to be more open to maybe share theirs. And it's like probably they feel like, oh, Yolanda does all this for us, and I'm sure her life was perfect from the beginning and the whole thing. So what better way to be vulnerable in front of them and share that? So it's all about education. We feel in the Latino countries, we sometimes feel like if we seek help from a counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist or we go therapy and all that is because we're crazy. And that is not the case. We go because we want to heal those wounds. So it's about that process of education that I think is a key component in order for us to heal and move forward. So I do share that story with them because there is nothing to be ashamed of. You know, the decision of my dad of being violent towards my mom, it was his decision ultimately. The decision of this man to touch me and do things that he was not supposed to, it was his decision. It wasn't my decision or my mom's decision or her lack of care for me. That is a lot of the times we feel guilty that, oh, that happened because I was not there at that moment. So it is how we can talk about this openly so we can heal in the process.
So wise, so wise. I've been using the illustration lately with groups of students I've been talking to about the circle of control. And we take a piece of paper and we draw a circle on it. And on the inside, we write down things that we can control. And on the outside of the circle, we write things that are out of our control. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying about the things that were out of your control, that's so powerful. There's no reason to have anxiety or worry about things that we can't do anything about anyway. But we do have control over our reactions and our responses and the way we practice our own resiliency skills, how we take care of ourselves, how we remember to take deep breaths and to ask for help when we need it. And all these things that we've learned how to do, those are in our control.
Right. And it's also the education portion of the part, like if we ask for help, that doesn't mean we're weak. That actually means that we're strong when we do that. You know, so it's almost like a shift and change of mind that you have to put in our brains, because, you know, sometimes we feel like if I'm going to be asking for help, or I need to talk about this and decompress, we feel like we're weak. And that is such an understatement. That is actually what the society sometimes have put in us. And it's hard to get out of that, you know, and show weakness in order for us to be in control, actually.
Community is stronger than the individual. So when we accept help, we actually are showing strength. Yeah,
exactly.
Amazing. So we know that you lean on your family and you lean on your faith and you lean on your understanding of ACEs. But what are some of those specific things that you do? What are some of your habits that you do for self-care? I know hanging out with Felipe is one of them.
That is one of them, but you know what? That is one of the areas that I need to improve, because sometimes I feel like I'm like do, but actually, when my mom was at the hospital, I have all this time with her, because it was of course, during COVID time, and I couldn't leave the hospital because otherwise I was not going to be able, I was not going to be allowed to come back. And I was like, well, she's going to pass with me being by her side. So I stayed 24/7 for 8 days with her. And I had so much healing during that super hard time in my life. You know, I always say that it was the hardest time in my life, but the most beautiful one at that time. And I believe up to the last minute, she guided me during the whole thing. So um, I realized that it's okay to say no when I feel overwhelmed about something, change things that because I'm not going to be the person I want to be when I'm going to do things. You know, sometimes we cram ourselves so much that what we give is like little like pieces of what we could have probably give in full. So now I'm trying to say no. Now I'm trying to make sure and listen to my heart and my soul, and be give myself that time. I do a lot of, I like to have every day when I leave, I want to have that at least 20 or 30 minutes just by myself, even if I had to sit in the car and just breathe and just think about, okay, this is what happened today, or just like sit there and listen to music and not think about anything. Uh, and sometimes we feel like we're not being productive, but I need to do that for myself, that period of time, in order for me to be more productive. Otherwise I get burnt out. I love to go out and like travel, and my husband was the one who started with this trait of which is great now. I appreciate it, that we take our one trip a year, just him and I. And at the beginning, I was like, no, I just cannot go without the kids. I feel selfish. This is awful. And the first time I remember when we traveled by ourselves, it was like terrible. I argued with him during the whole time. And once we got there and we were able to reconnect and everything, we came back and we're better parents. So it's just like little things like that that I understand. I have to make sure that I take that time for me in order for me to be a better mom, a better wife, a better, um, um, friend and sister and everything.
Oh, I love that. That's great examples of that image of filling our own cup so that we can pour into others. And
So,
you've learned how to do that. Good for you.
yeah,
Good.
I'm still a little bit like a freshman in that. I'm making progress. That's the important thing. Move forward. Don't move back.
Right, absolutely. Making progress. That's great. And all of those are good things for us to hear as well. Those of us who are doers and like to be productive and like to be busy all the time, hearing you say it took being forced to slow down
Mhm.
and to focus on myself and my relationship with my mom for me to realize how important this is for me. And I'm really proud of you. Good for you,
Oh,
Yolanda.
thank you.
Good for you. That's wonderful. Let's see. Maria noted in the chat the serenity prayer, that what you have talked about today reminded her of the serenity prayer. Lord, grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Let's see, Rebecca had said, how do you teach resilience to your children and the people you serve? So you talked a little bit more about specific things you do. Are you encouraging your own children to take up some of these habits, or the families that you work with? Are there things that you encourage them to do or teach them to do?
Yes, I have. And this is something new again, because like I said, I'm like a freshman on this area, and I want to make sure I pour the little knowledge that I have into them. But I have started to teach, because of course, anybody who has kids or have siblings and everything realize that they all have different personalities, and each personality works in a very different way. So it's so important for me also to know the language of love of my kids in order for me to teach resilience for them, because not every single thing is going to work 4 ways around. I have some, one of them is like about talking strong in specifics. Christian is the touchy feeling, like if I need to get something into his mind, I make sure that I start rubbing his head or, you know, his back, because I will have his full attention. And, you know, Joshua is a different way, like we have to do something fun in order for him to listen. So it's very important for you to know. But I am, because you know what? Whenever I go and learn something, I go back home and preach it. And they're because they're like, oh, what did you learn today? Which is hilarious in a way, but I say, hey, you know what? I need to put it into practice. So you are my number one priority. So I'm going to put it into practice to you. So it's up to you what you want to learn and practice. But I'm telling you, I'm practicing this lately and it's working great, you know, for example. So it's about not holding grudges, make sure that we're always open for them. You know, whenever they have any frustrations, anything that is happening, we're there for them. Jay and I are always there. And just breathe. If you're feeling anxious about something, go ahead and take a walk, you know, or do what is your self-care moment or thing that you like to do. So I tend to ask them, so if you feel this and that, what do you usually do? So then I learn, and then I can go ahead and take what they have learned and go ahead and guide them through it. So that's what I have been doing lately, specifically with my kids, with the families that I work with. Is like sharing my story and open that door of communication for them to learn.
I love that. Thank you so much. You said something that you feel like you're a freshman in this process, that you're still a long way from graduation. And I feel the same way, Yolanda. To use an illustration, I almost feel like I'm the shoemaker and my children are the barefoot children of the shoemaker. If you've ever heard that story, because I teach resilience skills to kids all day long. I practice breathing strategies and progressive muscle relaxation and mindfulness connection moments and all these things, but with my own family and my own kids at home. I'm not doing as good a job. So I too feel like maybe I might even just be an 8th grader and not even a freshman at that kind of thing. So thank you for inspiring me to do a better job of that with my own kids.
Absolutely.
Gretchen put a point in the chat about connecting love language with resiliency and learning building. Yeah, I had never thought of that. So that's a great thing to
yes. Yeah.
It's almost time for our hour to be up. I want to give just one more minute if anybody else has any last minute questions. All right. So a little while ago, while you were going through your presentations, one of the things that you said is that you felt that it was time that you started sharing your story. And I just want to say that we are so grateful that you decided to start sharing. And I think that it's the beginning of something beautiful as you become a catalyst in Watauga County and the high country, and especially in the community and the families that you work with. And you are a blessing. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I love that my first experience like that was with this amazing group. So thank you.
It's a good place to try it out. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending today, and we look forward for you to join us again next week. I'm not sure who's on the agenda for next Wednesday, but I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. So come back and join us. Thank you, Yolanda.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.